the ideas and objectives that were generated around each of the goal areas. So for goal 1, reducing racial homeownership gaps, the ideas heard focused on, creating resources and educational opportunities for immigrant populations, expanding eligibility criteria and exploring alternative funding for existing programs to better support underserved populations, refocusing our current programs around building generational wealth, and exploring additional opportunities for essential workers. Goal 2, which is to support existing homeowners. The ideas and objectives centered around investigating updates to our real estate tax relief program, expanding financial resources to support home repairs for targeted populations, creating new maintenance education resources for homeowners, facilitate community building and neighborhood improvement, and creating new resources for condo owners and condo boards. For goal 3, which is to increase the supply of homeownership housing, we heard that community members are interested in the county investigating barriers to condo production, exploring opportunities for the co-location of housing, creating financial incentives to support the production of new affordable homeownership units, exploring apartment or office condo conversions, investigating new land use changes to incentivize different ownership types, and exploring community land trust partnerships and other limited equity models. And then as far as goal 4, the idea is centered around creating pathways for homeownership for renters. The idea is centered around exploring additional opportunities to support essential workers, expanding homeownership programs to better support renters, exploring opportunities to support rent-to-own arrangements, and creating opportunities for home purchase for households with student loan debt. And so now that we've previewed the ideas and feedback that we heard during the community engagement phase, I wanted to pause for just a moment for questions before we transition to a discussion about, just some of the more specific program ideas and recommendations that we want your feedback on. So I guess for now, if there are any questions about what we just talked about, feel free to raise your hand. If not, I think we can move into the next portion of the meeting. So I'm going to give everyone a second to think about if they have a question. Mike Heminger?
Thanks, Caitlin. I heard you talk about there were some ideas that the county wouldn't be pursuing because it wasn't really feasible. Was that list compiled somewhere so that I guess we could kind of see if maybe there are partners in the community that might be able to take on those efforts, or how did we decide what's feasible and what wouldn't be feasible?
That's a really good question. So we're still working through program recommendations. We're actually working with a consulting firm to help kind of, synthesize and really kind of hone in on what we can really ultimately realistically achieve. The plan as of now is, once we release a draft of the program recommendations, we're hoping to also create a companion document that kind of talks about some of the objectives and ideas that we didn't think were necessarily feasible and the reasons why, and maybe ideas for how they could either form the basis for future research or whether they might be better suited to, for the community or, other partners to take on. So yeah, that's a really good question. I think, it's going to take a little bit of work to figure out what, we're still working on what that list is, but I do hear your suggestion and it's something we are definitely planning to do.
Great, thanks so much.
No problem. Jackie?
Yes, I would actually think that would be a separate activity to identify what some portion of how you've gone about identifying these goals, to identify what people think are criteria that should be applied to whether or not they're practical. Or if you have a contractor doing that, that should be reviewed before you try to produce a winnowed down list based on those criteria. Because I think this is a great aspirational list and people have worked very hard on it. So I don't think you should have the next step be that a contractor and winnows it down without discussing the criteria first.
Okay, thanks for the feedback. Yeah. Any other questions or suggestions? Oh, Alice, go for it.
I just wondered if you could tell us your time frame going forward. What are you calling the draft? Is it draft recommendations? And when you think they're going, are they going to go to the board and then to the commissions, or the other way around? So we can get a sense of what the products are and your time frame.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'm happy to share. It's actually, we have a slide at the very end that talks about that, so I'll just talk about it now.
I'm happy to wait. Whatever.
No,
whatever.
it's okay. I'm happy to talk about it now. It's relevant. So yeah, no. So we're hoping that we'll be able to release the draft recommendations, and it'll be a report sometime in November. Our plan right now is to preview these recommendations with both the homeownership subcommittee, but also with other county commissions that have been interested in this process, and other community stakeholder groups that might have a stake or be interested in providing feedback. Right now, it's looking like if there is any sort of board interaction with these recommendations, that likely will occur in January or February. We want to make sure that we're able to give the community enough time to weigh in on the draft before we do that. So that's the current thinking right now. And it's kind of it's a little bit of a moving target to make sure that what we're producing and what we're presenting to the community is a good product, and that we're confident in the recommendations that are being presented. Does that help?
Yes, thanks a lot.
No problem. So I think the next hand I see is JD.
Yes, hello, Caitlin and everyone. Just keep this basic. As you can continue to communicate this process, I'm very mindful and sensitive to all the conversations surrounding housing that we're having. So I just need to understand a bit more, when we're talking about stakeholders as we move forward. How are you going to be able to measure the effectiveness of your engagement over the next couple of months, and what means and modes do you plan to communicate so we don't have, kind of siloed conversations, but we have buy-in from the entire community, north, south, east, and west? So I'm just curious to know about that.
That's a really good question. I would love if there are other members of the core study group who would jump in and provide some details as well. I think our plan right now is to, like I said, bounce these recommendations off of county commissions and some of the community stakeholder groups. As far as measuring the effectiveness of that, I would kind of be interested to hear from other core study our staff members about other methods we use for other processes, because I don't know that we've actually talked about that yet.
I can go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I asked the question, so go ahead.
I think one of the things is really trying to ensure that our engagement aligns with folks at this table as well as other stakeholders. And so ensuring that information is disseminated freely in far advance notice, but then also ensuring that there is buy-in on this line, on this call, to really just disseminate that information to your own networks. I think because we're really unable to do it alone. It really kind of comes down to just having that collaboration, and of course, you reaching out to folks that you think would benefit from the information along the way. So that is definitely one of the ways that we want to ensure we get the word out, but I'm sure that my colleagues have other input on that.
Akira, just let me say, I'm really applaud your efforts, because I know you've been out there working hard in the community. But again, I will tell you that I'm innately aware and concerned about prior practices across government and our failure, in my opinion, to be innovative in how we communicate. And that what ends up happening is you end up getting groups of individuals or parties who carry the water. This is a serious issue that needs to get done. And if the county can put a postcard in the mail and tell me that my stormwater utility fee is going to increase, I think everyone in this county needs to understand what's at stake when we talk about even homeownership, because families have kids and students and new folks here. Everyone needs to know this information. I know you're doing the best you can. I'm just one person, and I'm watching this closely, how we communicate, so we don't fall into one group, either defending or just carrying a message about this sensitive area that is quite serious and needed, right? So, okay, thank you, Akira. And again, I'm not I'm just watching. And
No, I appreciate the feedback, JD, and I think we share that sentiment because we want the information to get in the hands of people that can utilize it, regardless of what meetings they attend, what subgroups they're a part of. It's really important to us as well. So I really do appreciate that. And it is our goal.
I know.
I think the other thing that I just wanted to add is that, the recommendations that are released as part of the study will really just, as I said, be recommendations. There's going to be a lot more work that will need to occur to actually implement those recommendations and, ensure that the what's being recommended actually is, carried through into our programs. So I think there's going to be some opportunity for engagement there. Once the changes that are made are, that could actually, create the effective change that we're looking to create, it's going to be on us to really do a better, and that was heard throughout the community engagement process, that we need to do a better job of communicating about what is offered throughout the county, and that those who could be impacted know what's available to them. So that's certainly on our list as we move forward. I think Nicole, were you the next?
Yes.
Hand raise? Okay.
Thank you. So I want to just make a general comment on two, and I'm sure we'll dig into it later, but I want to make sure that we're looking at goal 2 and supporting existing homeowners through an equity lens, because as we know, one of the major goals of this is to build wealth in traditionally underserved populations, and the existing home ownership group of people already have a lot of wealth built in their equity, specifically with homes in Arlington. And so if we are going to be investing in existing home ownership, it should be focused on people like on SSI or that are condo owners under a certain income level. And we shouldn't be focused on just a blanket assistance with existing homeowners, because I think that's the wrong demographic of who we should be targeting.
Sure. So let's, I think that thank you for that point, Nicole. Let's hold conversation on that, because I think it kind of relates to some of the questions we want to get into in a little bit. So let's just take one more question so we can move into the broader conversation. Okay.
Can I just really quick, if for goal number 3, as a result of that, I hope we can also have an implementation guide with a couple of different land use proposals coming through the pipeline right now. If we're able to integrate this proposal with upcoming zoning changes, that would be ideal. And then my last point on communication that JD had touched on was that previous outreach via postcard exclusively went to single family households, which is existing owners typically. And so if we are doing postcard outreach, to make sure that we're sending those to apartments and garden apartments as well.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, Jackie, one last question, and then let's move on to the next section.
Actually, I wanted to emphasize and maybe focus a little more on both what JD said and what Nicole said. And that is, I think we need to have a targeted focus on renters in particular, and renters within an income range, perhaps as well, and also a targeted focus on housing burdened homeowners. So so that the focus is on individuals who are in the category who need assistance to be able to participate in housing, and to find out, particularly if we're talking about what's feasible for the county, we need to have a lot more information about what's feasible for the target population that we're talking about. And I think it's worth this group maybe even having a discussion about what that multifamily renter population, what the best routes are for targeting and outreach to that population, as well as to the cost burdened homeowners, because as everyone here knows, that is something that we have said repeatedly in multiple activities, is that this is a group we're not reaching. And I think one of the things we need to spend more time on is how do we reach this group? I've been working with Sarah Tracy with the county on how they work on reaching this group. And it is a challenge for everyone from the county to each of our organizations. So anything we can do to improve that up front, I think would be great.
Yeah, it's certainly an ongoing conversation. So I appreciate that feedback. Okay, so I think with that, thank you everyone for your feedback and comments. I will definitely take them into consideration as we really start to build the communications plan around the recommendations, really great ideas. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Akiria, who's going to kind of walk us through some of the discussion that we wanted to have during today's meeting.
Thanks, Caitlin. So the importance of homebuyer assistance, and by homebuyer assistance, we mean assistance to help folks buy. The importance of those programs lies in their ability to bridge homeownership gaps and promote financial stability. So along the spectrum of best practices for home buyer assistance are programs that cater to slightly different purposes, from reducing upfront costs of market rate units to ensuring long-term affordability through deed-restricted units. So as noted on this slide, grants and forgivable loans allow for the greatest amount of wealth building. These funds are not recycled to benefit additional households, but they do support households with little to no strings attached, thus allowing them to keep the wealth building opportunity within their family. But next along this spectrum are unforgiven or 0% interest loans, especially in the case where these loans are deferred or no monthly payments are associated with them. These loans in this model have a positive impact on debt to income ratios because they make mortgage qualification reasonable, attainable for moderate income purchasers. This loan model offers some public trade-off by having to be repaid. So essentially, their households can benefit from the resource when those loans are repaid, or when those 0% interest loans are repaid. Now, unforgiven shared equity loans can be seen as almost a compromise between the grant and the deed restricted models, as the loan has to be repaid along with a portion of the appreciation, thus making funds available to future buyers. Shared equity and limited equity models both allow for wealth building. However, those models have more of a public trade-off by creating opportunities for moderate income home buyers, especially in areas where real estate prices may be prohibitive. So these units maintain affordability by allowing those home buyers to build wealth, build equity over time. So in terms of the county's programs, currently the Live Where You Work program model, which is the loan that the county, or the forgivable loan that the county offers to employees, that model provides the most wealth building potential by forgiving the loan throughout the employee's tenure. MyPap and Spark both deepen affordability. MyPap being the Moderate Income Purchase Assistance Program, and a soft or silent second trust, which again considerably helps buyers by reducing their debt to income ratio. And then Spark being a loan from Virginia Housing that has a 1% interest rate reduction from the interest rate at that given time. So both of those are in the middle. But then there are our affordable dwelling units, and those are the units, that's the county's mechanism to preserve affordability. The current ADU program model requires affordability into perpetuity. So how communities structure program options across this spectrum plays a really important role in shaping the financial outcomes of moderate income purchasers who utilize them, right? Based on our conversations over the past few months, wealth building models garner a lot of support, more than models that are intended to preserve affordability. So again, MyPap offers a 30-year silent second trust for up to 25% of the purchase price. And we're going to ask you some questions about the MyPap program. MyPap has a shared appreciation model, which means that a portion of the appreciation throughout the time that the purchaser or the owner owns the home, up until the time that they repay the MyPap loan, they have to give us a portion of that appreciation. And that helps us to continue to support additional households. So Elise will launch our first poll question. And that question is, assuming that there are changes to MyPap or our Moderate Income Purchase Assistance Program, what models should be prioritized? So models that have a lower shared appreciation percentage. Currently, the MyPap loan requires an appreciation percentage of up to 25% of the appreciation, but that's just proportionate to the amount that the buyer gets when they purchase their unit. So if the county provides them with 20% of their purchase price, then the shared appreciation when they resell or refinance is 20%. So they would have to provide the county with 20% of their appreciation. Or should we prioritize forgivable grants or loans, or have a different model altogether? We are curious about what your thoughts are. And we have some responses coming in, but I'll wait until folks have responded a bit more.
Carrie, while we're waiting, can
Sure.
I just offer an observation? So,
Sure.
and I think that I just want to reinforce something that you said, that I know people may look through this slide deck after the fact. So, and this kind of spectrum between building wealth and preserving affordability, I think that largely agree with from a directional perspective, but I think that it is just important to emphasize that all of these models do allow for wealth creation. There's been considerable research that's been done in evaluation of shared and limited equity unit models, and that do show that, not universally, but on average, participants in shared equity programs like community land trusts and other deed restricted units are able to accrue a meaningful amount of wealth through that type of home ownership, while preserving affordability moving forward. So, I don't want the impression I just want to reinforce that there are opportunities to build wealth. It's just the amount of wealth and how it's tailored to the amount of public support and investment in the project. And one of the other trade-offs that that isn't shown here, but and it'd be hard to show it explicitly on here, but it is sort of the cost of the investment. The further you go towards the building wealth side of the spectrum, if you're going to serve the same number of people, it's going to cost a lot more. That is the trade-off. So if you want to emphasize building wealth over time and maximize the wealth that an individual supported household will be able to receive, and you still want to increase the number of people you're serving and making a meaningful impact on addressing the full need for affordable homeownership, then you're going to have to figure out a way to pay for that, either through financial support or other tools like considerable increases in density or the like. So I just want to put all that out there, that that we shouldn't think of this necessarily as a binary, and that this is and I should say one last piece is that sort of devil comes down into the details in all program design. Like poorly designed programs can lead to failing on all of these fronts, whereas well-designed programs can use a shared equity model that actually, you can tweak it and increase the amount of wealth that someone creates, depending on the program design. So, sorry, rambling on a little bit right now, but I wanted to put all that information on the table.
No, it's very helpful, Mike, and you and I have certainly had these conversations before where, we know that we are trying to balance the interests of home buyers specifically, and then also along with the long-term community affordability, and what does that look like? And that is there's the tension between the two, and it's much more complex than this slide makes it makes it appear, but I really do appreciate your feedback. So it looks like we do have a lot of responses for this slide. So Alice, you were asking, could we consider slightly higher upfront subsidy with MyPAP so more can qualify, or that the purchase price is more attainable, and then leave the shared appreciation percentage so we can get that amount back for the next buyer? Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something that we could, that we can consider. I am curious about any other insights that folks have when you've stated different loan model altogether. So if you've answered different loan model altogether, if you don't mind just kind of sharing with us what your perspective is on that, either in the chat or verbally possible. I think we got 5 people that said a different loan model altogether.
Hey, Tria, this is Mike. Something that I was thinking about was, we got data early on in this study that talked about how most people, well, not most, there's a reasonable number of people in Arlington, minorities and historically underserved included, that could afford a mortgage payment. They're often paying more in rent than they would for a mortgage. And so I wonder if there are programs where, the down payment could be, added as a second loan at the end of the, the term, or, an option where the down payment is due upon like refinancing after, 5 or 10 years. But for me and, a lot of people in my community, that down payment is one of the most significant barriers. And so if we can, find a way to move that or to reimagine it, I think will have greater access to homeownership. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Mike. So I want to clarify how the MyPAP program currently operates. So the MyPAP program is currently a silent second, which means there is no interest associated with our loan, and there are no monthly payments associated with our loan. It has to be repaid when the household refinances or when they resell the home. If they don't have enough equity in the home when they refinance, they don't have to repay us. But our loan is completely silent until you are selling your home. And so if you are referring to a different model than what I just mentioned, Mike, if you could just kind of chime in again to provide some clarification.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to, but I think there's only like 6 or 7 people in the county enrolled in that. Is that right, or is my math wrong?
So MyPAP is an ongoing program. In last fiscal year, we served 13 households. And the fiscal year prior to that, it was like 11. And so that's typically the numbers that these programs do throughout the region. And it really has a lot to do with the needle that you're threading, right? So we are targeting households at 80% of the area median income because of the funding source that we have, but they have to qualify for a mortgage. And so that's, it's really, really challenging for households at 80% of AMI. One car, one student loan really kind of takes your debt to income ratio out of whack. So yes, to answer your question, it is a small program, but we are certainly seeing more interest in the program and more households that are able to actually purchase. Of course, this market presents challenges unto themselves, especially with interest rates at this point. But that's why we like to cobble together these resources and use Spark and MyPAP together, which is a significant help because it allows for that household to get a 1% interest rate reduction and get the MyPAP silent second trust for up to $112,000. So it really is about just trying to put together the right benefits to help folks at 80% of AMI get into home ownership. So do we have anything else or anyone that wants to share a different model? Looks like forgivable grant or loan is really where people think we should focus our attention.
Carrie, I have a question.
Yes. Yes.
If you lowered it to 20% versus 25%, that would maybe free up more money, but there isn't a problem with having funds to do this. In other words, you're never constricted in saying you're running low on MyPAP funds. So that isn't really sort of an option to open it up to more people.
Yeah, I think that kind of leads into our next question, Richard, because at 80% of AMI, are we able to serve as many people as people think we should serve? Probably not, because at 80% of AMI, it's that threading of the needle again. But we do want to gauge what you all feel about increasing MyPAP or increasing the income limits for these programs. But before I get to that, Nicole?
Should we not touch on that? And
Yeah,
we'll do that later. Okay.
Yeah, let's do that in a moment. Mike?
Okay.
Go ahead, Nicole.
I had a couple of comments. I do think that generally, I don't think that helping like 10 people out of our total population of almost like 250,000 people is putting a dent in the problem. And for the amount of money that we're spending on it, I don't think is, it's a nice thing to say that we do, but I just don't think it has the impact that we could have with a different a different designed program. I don't know how much we have to work with, or and how much the board is willing to put into this, plus or minus what we already have. But I'd like to see us try to put this money towards solving a larger scale, or providing a larger scale solution. If this is able to increase the number of people to even like 100 to 150, I think in like the 80s we were at like 250. Like that's the sort of scale where I feel that this might be worth talking about. But if we're just increasing it by another like 10 to 15, I don't think it's worth putting in all of this effort and patting ourselves on the back for it. I think that we really need to redesign the whole program. And something that I think Mike said, and I don't know exactly what that looks like, but the help with the down payment, because like he said, a lot of people are paying just as much in rent as they would for their mortgage and their condo fees. And the big hurdle is the down payment sometimes. And so if we were able to do, it doesn't even have to be forgivable, like just a longer, a second mortgage essentially on the down payment, maybe that could be helpful. I know that the timing of that might be a little bit more difficult, but with like the LEDC assistance, maybe that would be helpful. I don't know, again, the scale of what we have, but I just want to, in terms of funding availability, but I just want to try to gear our goals higher, and make sure that we're helping significantly, not just like a little bit more people, but a significant amount more people.
Understood. That's very well taken. I think we had a couple, I think Mike was next.
Yeah, and I kind of agree there that we need to, there's how does this fit into the overall homeownership support ecosystem, and where do we allocate our resources within that ecosystem? And I was going to say, like, if we're going to do, I'm fine with like some more on the forgivable wealth building side of things if it's going to continue to be a comparatively shallow subsidy. But like the challenge is, in order to really help people, especially in this interest rate environment, it's really affecting the need for down payment assistance and the need for programs like MyPAP in the current interest rate environment, which will hopefully not last forever. But 8% interest rates are closer to the historical norm than the 3% interest rates or 4% interest rates we've seen over the past 5 years or so. So hopefully it'll settle somewhere in the middle. But I would say that if we're going to talk about deepening the subsidy, we actually should be thinking about, can we afford that over the long term? DeepC deepened their down payment assistance subsidy, and then they ran out of money halfway, 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way through the year. And it threw the entire program into chaos. We had people that were ready to close on loans and buy their homes that are now in limbo for 5-6 months, 4, 5, 6 months. So, that is the issue you have to look at, that if you do make it more generous, you do increase the demand for it because it'll work for more people. All that's a good thing. But then you need to be able to respond with increased resources to support that. And if we're willing to make that commitment, great. But if not, then we need to rethink that. The other thing I would say is, the more we get into deeper subsidy, like, I think we definitely need to address our inventory challenge. So I mentioned about
so we do get into inventory in a moment. So
right. Well, I that was going to be secondary to the point. I was going to say, I think we should address inventory, but we're in reality, we're such a small county that we're always going to be inventory constrained. So that if we are providing deeper subsidies to facilitate this, that's when I think we really need to be thinking about those shared equity models that allow for continued affordability over the long term. Because if we're only going to be supporting 13 homeowners or 13 units a year, in my mind, isn't it better to have that compound over time, so those 13 can have subsequent affordability after that, sort of a down payment for permanent affordability? So that's kind of what I meant when I was thinking of like a different model altogether.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that. So there's so much that we want to cover. So I want to try to just at least touch upon the remaining questions and continue the conversation. So throughout the process of this study, and you can go to the next slide, Caitlin. So throughout the process of this study, we've heard differing perspectives on who our programs should target income-wise. So we'd like to get your perspective on income-based targeting. Should we target above 80% of the area median income? And for reference, a household of 2 at 80% of income, and I think I can try to put this in the chat, earns 96,480. And I'm just gonna put this. That is the current area median income parameters as per HUD.
Can I make a comment really quick just while we're on this? I think that I sent this in an email. The AMI for a single person is very different than 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever that is. And so like my answer for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is very different than my answer for 1, because I think we should like reduce it for 1, honestly, and we should significantly increase it for 2 and above, if that makes any sense.
Yes. Okay, and so it looks like most folks are thinking that we should provide assistance for households up to 120% of the area median income. Okay, that's helpful. Brian, did you want to, did you have a question?
I think Mike was first, so he beat me out to it.
Okay.
I just got done talking, so I'm happy to let Brian jump ahead of me in the queue.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. So just looking at number 3, it says should level of assistance be the same across all income levels? My opinion is kind of self-evident. I think our amount of assistance should be higher for those with lower income levels and less for those with higher income levels, because that's where the need is. To another point made, if someone is making if a family of 2, let's say, is making 120% of the AMI, I think the amount of assistance that they should receive within their bracket should be less relative to, say, a family of 2 making 80 or 100% of AMI. So I do think it should be set according to need, i.e. income.
Thank you. Michael?
Thanks. So I just want to share some quick observation that I had. So we just wrapped up on Friday a task force in Fairfax County that was looking at homeownership, one of their homeownership programs, their affordable dwelling unit program, which actually produces a decent amount of volume. So they are actually, their workforce dwelling unit program, which is a related program, but is similar to our ADU program. And we actually just recommended their program. It originally went up to 120% AMI. And after a lot of analysis and data based on the program not working particularly well, we actually lowered the income targeting to be capped at 100% of AMI. And the reason being, and Jill was on that committee as well, but the reason being that those 120% AMI units sometimes sit on the market for in some cases, up to 2 years, because they have a hard time finding people that are willing to, that have that income. Like 120%, would you struggle to find your perfect home in the Arlington market or the Fairfax market? Yes, potentially, but it's still a decent amount of money. And then in reality, when people look at all of the sort of paperwork that's associated with affordable housing programs, the additional equity restrictions, the potential equity, whether it's a shared equity or affordable resale, people had a really hard time moving units that were targeted at 120% of AMI much less something like 150. So if we're talking about MyPath specifically, that may be a slightly different conversation because the WD units
Yes, this is with regard to MyPath.
Okay, I apologize, but I do think that we should be wary of that because they're less tied to individual units. That may be less of an issue in the context of MyPath, but still finding people that are willing to accept some of the shared equity or resource sharing restrictions that would be associated with MyPath could create a problem.
Exactly, very true. And we actually see that as well, even on households that are earning 100% of AMI in terms of our affordable dwelling units. Whenever we've had conversations with households that are higher on that higher end of the spectrum, they are less interested in the set aside units like an ADU and more interested in the down payment assistance like the MyPath program. So I agree 100%. Jill? And then we are moving to the next. Actually, we have two more poll questions from this slide that Elise will go ahead and introduce while Jill is asking her question.
Thank you. And just really echoing Mike's comments, just to be like mindful of that, the situation that we saw in Fairfax with just, units sitting on the market for a ridiculously long period of time because they could not find a buyer who was willing to accept that price level and any sort of shared equity restrictions. So I know the higher you go in income, more choices you have. So that's just echoing Mike's point. Thank you.
Exactly, right. And in the case of ADUs, it's not even just the shared equity, it's the limited equity because those units don't even increase in value in the same way that a market rate unit would. And of course, we know that the market for condos is not exactly what people would think it is in the traditional sense. But I think folks at that income level do have a more difficult time adjusting to the fact that their appreciation is not going to be the same as their neighbors. So thank you for that, Jill. So it's looking like when we're, I think two questions that we've asked is, should the level of assistance be the same across all incomes or lower for higher incomes? And it looks like most of the folks that it looks like all of the folks that have replied said lower for higher income applicants. And then in terms of our targeting, should we target our program marketing to specific populations? And it looks like we are pretty across the board on that. And it sounds like people think that that is a necessary aspect of outreach for our programs. I think, yes, JD?
So this number 4 is a very interesting conversation, and there's to each one of these categories, whether it's Blacks and Hispanics, our first generation buyers as it's laid out. I think each one of these has, to your point, a purpose and good intent. But you also have to take into account, if you start pulling out one of these, right, i.e. Blacks and Hispanics, you also got to look at the mass gentrification that has happened over years. And if, in fact, by gentrification, redlining, in fact, caused a number of groups to be moved out unwillingly, right? So I can see how households with ties to historically redlined communities, for me, it is up there. But first generation buyers, if your group of people who came in the past 20 years have not been those groups that have been marginalized historically, then it's going to throw off your data. All right. And so I think everyone here has a purpose, and who's missing. I'm just interested to hear other folks' thoughts about number 4. I Brian has his hands raised because I'm just looking at that in a lot of different ways. Demographically, those first generation of buyers who come from families who are perhaps well off, right?
So let me quickly interject here.
Yeah, go ahead.
one of the words that I really wanted to make sure that we focused on here was program marketing, right? So we're not thinking about only offering programs for one of these specific categories. We're thinking, where can we bolster our marketing efforts to just kind of increase the households that are coming through the door. But I completely understand your sentiment, and I did want to just point that out, but Brian, go ahead.
No, it's kind of, sorry.
Can you explain first generation buyers though? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so there nationally, there are some programs where, and there's no way to go into the nuances of program administration and how you determine what that looks like and how you determine if someone is a first generation buyer. But there would need to be paperwork, documentation to support that. It's certainly more one of those programs that would really need to be fleshed out, and we'd have to look at some best practices, but it is currently being implemented in other communities. And so we wanted to make sure that it was represented here.
Okay.
If I can kind of speak to number 4 a little bit. So I do agree with something Jay is expressing. In really looking at, you don't want to be, in my view, kind of skewing up your data by targeting a lot of families who might have moved here but have means, and so you're not entirely addressing the kind of the reparative function of this policy. It's in some ways diluting that benefit. But one way you might consider changing this or just including it is targeting individuals or families with high debt load, right? Because then that's addressing a lot of that the long-term difficulties that people experience in trying to get into home ownership, having this debt load, having a let's say a credit score which is not stellar, right? Being able to look at these factors which historically have been barriers for entry for a lot of people of color, and making sure that that's also addressed, and that could also perhaps fit in with first generation buyers. But I think it's something that gets at with a bit more specificity at this point of trying to lift up people who have traditionally been excluded from the homeownership market.
Right. Thank you for that. I agree. And I think also in terms of first generation buyers, any program like that the criteria would really need to overlap with other criteria like income, possibly neighborhood, those sorts of things, not just a household that is their parents just haven't purchased a home or don't own a home. So we wouldn't be looking at that type model. I think we want to have programs that are that effectively address the disparities in the community, and that would not be one of them on its head. That makes sense. Okay, so I think we have gotten really great responses here, so I really appreciate that. Caitlin, can you go to the next slide? So the county currently offers programs to existing homeowners as part of its efforts to promote homeownership sustainability. And by existing, I just mean households that currently own a home. Rebuilding Together provides assistance for repairs. The county funds foreclosure prevention counseling for homeowners that are experiencing hardship. The county's real estate tax relief program provides financial relief to homeowners, particularly those within lower income ranges and other specific qualifications. And of note, the implementation framework of the Affordable Housing Master Plan recommends a forthcoming review of the real estate tax relief program. And then also in partnership with the City of Alexandria, the county co-sponsors condo education to condo owners, and sessions are taught by industry professionals. And so over the past few months, we've obtained valuable insights on program enhancements that are intended to support homeownership sustainability for existing moderate income homeowners. The ideas that you see here are not formally offered through county programs, but have emerged from our community engagement, research, and collaborative conversations with the subcommittee as strong potential benefits that would help communities across a range of homeowners. So, for example, post-purchase education, which is essentially helping owners to make informed financial decisions. We think that would be beneficial irrespective of age, housing type, income, neighborhood, or ownerability level. Support for condo owners that is specific to special assessments, which is, an additional fee that you would have to pay as a condo owner for certain unexpected repairs. This type of support would be beneficial to a range of owner categories. And then we have supporting condo communities with capital improvements and governance. This is ultimately an investment in the well-being and sustainability of the community, again, across the spectrum. And lastly, offering home improvement loans and grants. We think that as an idea has come about as something that people think would serve a vital role in promoting housing quality and accessibility. So financial assistance is necessary, and I think it contributes to community resilience. But we want to know, what are we missing? What additional support should we consider for current homeowners? And I think, Nicole, you may have started to speak about this earlier. If you did not finish your thought, feel free to jump in right now. But yeah, we want to hear from you about what else can we be considering in addition to what you see here and what you've heard thus far, specific to existing homeowners. And also, as you're thinking about that question, what can we do specifically to help older adults? So this includes modifications, it includes our existing programs, revisiting our existing programs. What can we do for to provide additional supports to condo owners? So we really want to just try to drill down on your perspective of additional supports that can be provided. Sorry about that, Nicole.
No, it's totally fine. The reason why I earlier said singled out condos is that they appreciated a much lesser rate than townhouses and single family homes. And so the equity in those homes is presumably less beneficial to the owner, and not to mention variable condo fees. So I'm in support of helping condo owners. My general opposition to just blanket moderate income homeowners is that the appreciation of their home and the value in which they're able to borrow against it is way higher than the people that I think that we should be targeting for this type of a program, which is people that haven't gotten into the game and haven't been able to benefit from appreciation of homes, especially in Arlington. So I totally understand our aging demographics and those that are on SSI and disability, and their inability to access funding or renovation costs. And for that reason is why I also mentioned that. But I don't think that we should be targeting general moderate income homeowners for repairs or grants or things of that nature with limited funding. But I do for condos.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Nicole. I thought I saw another hand, but perhaps.
Sure, I think the next hand that I saw was Alyssa.
Oh, sure. Hi. So I wasn't aware if there were public comments allowed to be provided, but it sounds like there are because you called
Yes.
on me. So thank you for that. I'm in a condo. I definitely echo Ms. Nicole Merlene's comments that condos don't appreciate as much. In fact, during COVID, some of them went down significantly. People didn't really want to live in high rises and touch the same buttons and things like that. I know that there were some challenges with county staff, even locating a list of the condo HOAs on your website, slightly probably out of the purview of this discussion, but I wanted to mention that. They had a hard time with that previously. They were doing some site plan review. So maybe some more transparency or on what's on your website. I have seen that there are some trainings available to my HOA. Daytime like this doesn't work for most people because most people are doing other things and working. And I'm not familiar with the greater plan, but you did mention the real estate tax relief. I've testified many times in front of the Disability Commission as well. And that was promised, I think it was January 2022 to be revisited. And yesterday, some county staff said that it would be another 5 years before they revisit that. It's a 2016 short-term actions that are listed in this plan. And in my mind, short-term is not 2028 when something is listed as 2016. That's just my thoughts. I'm I'm confused about how things might overlap. I know there are some first-time homebuyer programs with Virginia Housing. Is some of this a grant from them that you're using, or is this a separate program? I'm sorry if everyone else knows this. Thank you.
No, no worries. Great question, Alyssa. So our Spark program is a program that we have in conjunction with Virginia Housing. We have an allocation from Virginia Housing for Spark, and Spark is the 1% interest rate reduction program. But beyond that, the programs are funded through the county and federal funds. But our loan programs can be utilized along with Virginia Housing down payment assistance loans, or down payment assistance programs. And so we really do try to cobble together those resources whenever possible, whenever households are eligible for multiple resources. But thank you for the question. Patty?
Yeah, so the one thing about the condos is there are programs like through CHP, Community Housing Partners, that do weatherization. They don't provide assistance to condos, right? They provide assistance to townhouses or single-family homes that aren't jointly owned. So they are definitely not getting as many options as somebody in a single-family home does. I think exploring options there and seeing if there's federal funds to help with the entire condo, because I think weatherization and putting improvements in their HVAC systems and heating and cooling would be great, windows, stuff like that. I think the other thing is going back to, I can't remember who said it, but education about mailing out information about what homeowners can do, existing homeowners, because I think it gets fuzzy with people and people don't always navigate websites very well and stuff like that. There are, and I don't know if Richard just put this or not, but there are loans through the government that you can get if you hire a contractor. I think it's a 103 or something like that. But I think the education about it, and with the first-time home buyers, I think education is huge. I have gone into so many homes where people are first-time home buyers and they don't know anything about home maintenance. They don't have money saved up for capital cost or capital improvements. And that's where they get in trouble. And then the home just deteriorates and stuff. I'm a huge advocate, as you know, for people who are aging in place. There's simple modifications that we could do. But I definitely think we need to do a better job of targeting certain people and neighborhoods, and getting the word out, and doing more and more education around everything.
Thank you, Patty. That's really helpful, and I think we share those sentiments. And thank you, Richard, for providing the information about the Virginia Housing Grant Program. Did we have additional questions? Yeah. Caitlin,
This
for
is
some
Alice.
reason,
I have
I'm
one.
not seeing. Okay.
Go ahead, Alice.
I wanted to echo what Alyssa was saying, that I've been in a couple of commission meetings. Different commissions are really asking about the real estate tax relief program. And I mean, one correction is that from the Affordable Housing Master Plan, there was a group that looked at that program. And I think they concluded their work in like 2017 or 2018. So it's not all the way back, but a lot of people were not satisfied with the outcome of that initial look. And really basically since the report came forth from it, it just appeared inadequate to address the current situation. And now that's, almost 5 years ago again. So I think that, maybe we figure out in this process, how do we, kind of articulate the fact that many groups from, aging, disability, housing commission, now, this subcommittee, a lot of people are looking at that program from different angles and all wanting to have it, have a new look in today's housing market. And, one of the main things we know, of course, is that in order to keep that going, it would be helpful if fewer people had the exemption and more people had the deferral, right? It seems like too many people who have gotten a big equity bounce in their home because of Arlington's crazy market are not having to repay the taxes that they are deferring. It's being, canceled out basically. And that's not a population that needs this help. So if we're looking for families who want to pass something on, the money that the families that have plenty to pass on could be returning to the county. That would help other folks who are struggling to pay their real estate tax. So I think we need to look at that more, sooner because of an equity situation. But also along those lines, I wonder what the actual criteria is and if we need to change that as well. That this market has gotten so expensive. There could be people who are really moderate income people for whom the real estate tax, increases they're experiencing might make them have to sell their home too. So maybe there's some tiered assistance to help more people than we thought needed in the past, but that most or all of them on some equation are giving the money back at the end. So it would be much more of a revolving loan fund kind of not the right model, but you know what I mean, revolving assistance. So more people return their money, but that allows a higher income people who are also struggling to keep their housing to be able to participate.
Thank you, Alice. And so unfortunately, I and none of my colleagues have any up-to-date recent info on the revisit of the real estate tax relief program. And so we want to make sure that any information that's disseminated is most accurate and up to date. So we do not have that information as of today, but I do want to, I see that there are a couple additional questions, and I unfortunately have to limit the questions to about 30 seconds because we are really low on time. So we can go to Wendy.
Sure, thanks very much. I think the issue of deferral versus forgiveness is a good one for discussion with facts presented, et cetera. But a different subject, I think, is recognizing that we're talking about the very old at some point. We're talking about 80, 85, and 90-year-old people who are living in their homes and want to stay there. And all of a sudden are struck with, I've got to fix my roof, I've got a plumbing problem, et cetera. It's not that the challenge is not just the money to pay for, but also the knowledge and ability and effectiveness in being able to find a contractor manage that contractor. And if there is a disagreement at the end of the job, who's the helpful arbitrator to come out with some fair resolution? So I think there is a degree of technical assistance that needs to be provided to older adults as they try to navigate this difficult time.
Thank you, Wendy. Kathy?
Yes, hi, this is Kathy Scruggs. I
Hey, Kathy, you're
You're
breaking up
in.
for me.
Oh.
Can you start over? You were breaking up a little bit.
Okay, let's see.
Kathy, can you type your comment in the chat? Because for some reason, whenever you start to speak, it just starts to
Okay.
get a little wonky.
All right, but I'm trying to look at where do I type it?
So on the right side of your screen.
Yes.
Well,
Can you go to the top and click the word chat? To the very top of your screen where you see everyone's photo, right above that.
No, I don't see that anymore.
Okay, well, can
you hear me?
It's intermittent. It's in and out. I'm so sorry.
Okay. I'll send something in.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So did we have
Catherine, Catherine, if you want to text me, I could read it out to them if you want to text quickly. Just a thought.
Yeah.
Okay, so really quickly, moving forward, and this is probably not going to be enough time to really kind of go into this the supply question, but we can touch on it. Caitlin, you can move to the next slide. So we know that affordable homeownership supply allows a broader segment of the population to participate in ownership and therefore benefit from the associated financial opportunities such as the tax benefits and home equity, and that this thus overall contributes to financial stability and thriving communities. So the missing middle or and expanded housing option development allows for construction of duplexes, townhomes, multifamily buildings, and single family residential lots. Rental to ownership conversion. The way that this would work is that the county would support efforts by tenants to purchase their rentals by converting to condo or cooperative housing. And then a homeownership fund, specific funds that would be designated to support objectives to create and maintain affordable homeownership opportunities for eligible beneficiaries. And so these are some of the things that we have heard. Again, as Caitlin stated before, this is not a recommendation. We just want to kind of get your feedback on what you see here in terms of some of these ideas, and then if there are any other ideas in terms of enhancing supply that we can take away from this conversation would be helpful. Michael, and we have 30 seconds for each of you.
Yeah, I was going to say all of the above, just to become, we would have to be cautious with program design with rental to owner conversions. And there's a lot of best practices that we can learn from our neighbors in the district, as well as Montgomery County, Maryland. So I'll just say that, like, if we would pursue that path, we need to really take a deep dive into the details.
Yes, thank you for that. JD?
Well, thank you. All of what my good friend just stated, I tend to agree. Just one note of consideration. We either have to be missing middle or we have to be expanded housing options. I understand what you're saying, but I think the county changed it, right, to expanded housing options. So I think we need to be consistent in how we articulate missing middle or expanded housing options. Aren't they both the same now?
Well, the expanded housing options would be the development. So,
But
yeah,
the term missing middle has been should be removed from how we talk about expanded housing options. I get what you're saying.
got it.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Missing middle is just too contentious. People like to fight over missing middle.
Nicole.
Are you looking for suggestions on implementation for this?
For
Or should we come to our
implementation
next?
for increasing or enhancing supply? That's really the question. What other opportunities should we explore to enhance supply?
Okay, I think that especially for Plan Langston Boulevard in our tapered zones, that we should encourage and/or encourage by way of special exception the building of ownership. I also think that we need to work with the greater planning department in addressing our special exception process. We have a lot of leverage when people ask for special exceptions, setbacks, FAR increases, and part of that can be ownership units. And I think that we don't utilize that tool as much as we can. I understand the importance of adding to AHIF when we are building apartment units, but I think that another tool that needs to be considered as an option, maybe not at the same degree as AHIF contributions, but as another option for those that are looking to build ownership is to, or not, when they're looking to build either apartments or condos, is incenting for condo development. Because we're seeing more townhouse built growth, which is still not a lot, than we are condo growth. So we know that 500K or less is exclusively condos in Arlington, Virginia. We're building almost none of them. And so anywhere that we can incent the development of that in the SAP special exception process is fantastic.
Thank you for that. JD, did you put your hand back up, or is that from earlier? Perhaps not. Okay.
I'll put it.
It looks like Alyssa has a comment.
Oh,
I'm just curious if you looked at what California did to deal with their housing crisis as far as accessory dwelling units is concerned. It wouldn't provide ownership opportunities per se, but it might deal with some of your, aging in place or people moving their elderly people into their homes or having a granny flat type thing. Anyway, that's they changed zoning to add ADUs basically. So at least provide that recommendation. It might provide more supply. It wouldn't provide more opportunities for ownership. And I realize that's what this is about. Sorry. But
no worries.
And actually, as a first-time homeowner myself, I had no idea about the Virginia housing grants. I've never heard of this Spark. I have no idea what you're talking about. So I'm not really sure how you would go about finding the people like me. I don't know if you can work with real estate agents or things like that, but I think there's really a lack of knowledge about the programs that actually exist to help people get into homes. I wish I had a creative solution to offer you about how to solve that. I don't think I do, other than maybe real estate agents or maybe working with banks or things like that.
It's right. I agree. It's an ongoing process, and we're constantly trying to educate agents and lenders and appraisers, anyone, all of the professionals within the real estate community. But to your point, it's certainly not an open and shut situation. No. It's just it's an ongoing conversation that we have to have. And with lenders that typically work with folks that are of moderate income, because I think that's really the crux of our programs. Moderate income is a criteria. Jacqueline?
I was just going to add that we updated our accessory dwelling policy a few years ago.
Okay.
So, go ahead, Jackie.
Yeah, the other Jacqueline. Yes, I wanted to ask if Michael Spots could elaborate on the difference between missing middle and expanded housing that he put in the chat. He said there are some options that are available under missing middle that are not included in expanding housing, and I didn't understand that.
Mike Spots, did you want to expand
Mike?
on the comment in the chat quickly?
Sure. So, there are other ways that you can do it, some which would be kind of like a layer add-on to EHO. So, for example, maybe a little bit of additional density or a little bit of additional height or lot coverage if you're doing affordable home ownership. Some specific incentives for committed affordable units. And then there are other missing middle forms like cottage clusters, I think that, or reductions in minimum lot size, things that would encourage more flexibility. There's a lot of different affordable homeownership development typologies that Habitat has built, as well as other developers, affordable homeownership developers across the country that don't necessarily fall right into the specific EHO bucket, which I understand why they might not have been included in this first go around. But there are, like I said, if you could reduce minimum lot size, that encourages smaller, the creation of smaller, maybe 1,000 to 1,500 square foot property typologies while still being fee simple ownership. So I don't want to get too much in the weeds because we're running out of time, but happy to continue that conversation as well.
Thank you. I understand it now, but I would suggest the way to do that is to reverse these two here so that it's expanded housing options, which is what we have right now. And that you would want to put underneath that as exploring to enhance would be expanded missing middle construction. Because you're proposing some additional options that aren't currently in expanded housing, correct? Some changes.
Those are some of the ideas, that we could that the county could consider.
Ideas. I'm just saying if we want to be clear that we're talking about additional ideas, not the old missing middle and not the current expanded housing options, but some new ideas that could be applied.
Thank you.
That's helpful feedback. I think maybe just one more comment, and it looks like Alice might be the last hand up that I saw.
Sure. I was just going to share with you what Catherine Scruggs had tried to say. She texted me and she said this was regarding home ownership. And she says, while we recognize that most older adults prefer to age in their homes, it may not be sustainable to support that. The COA, that's the Commission on Aging, Housing Subcommittee, is interested in the development of much more assisted living units, especially those which would be affordable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
I think that is all that I have. Caitlin, do you want to kind of bring people?
Yeah, no, this was
back into speed?
Great feedback and really great discussion. Thank you everyone for participating, but also hanging on until the end. We got some really great ideas, and I think, we're looking forward to trying to incorporate some of this into, our current line of thinking as it relates to, the specific program recommendations. I touched on this earlier, but I did just want to give a quick reminder about the schedule. We're looking to release our draft recommendations, likely going to be closer to November. We're definitely going to be consulting this subcommittee, additional county commissions and other stakeholders on these recommendations, and trying to get some meaningful feedback on, what's in there. We're hoping to consider hoping that the board can consider these recommendations early in the new year. And then beyond that, I think, again, it's, there's going to be more work. The recommendations that we present will, again, just be recommendations. And so we'll have to really kind of do some more work to make those recommendations into a reality, especially as it relates to our existing programs. So with that, thank you again for participating, and stay tuned for more information from us over the next couple weeks. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you to staff for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Alice, are you available now?
Yes, thank you all.